Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Matthew Johnstone, and today I'm going to be presenting reasonably quickly a presentation that I developed for the Black Dog Institute called Headstrong. And Headstrong is really an understanding of what mood disorders are, such as depression and bipolar, but also understanding resilience. Unfortunately, today I'm not going to be able to get through the whole thing, but I'll go through it as reasonably and as well-paced as I can. If you're interested in Headstrong, and if you belong to a school, you can download it for free. It's at headstrong.org.au. And this program that was actually developed with partnership with the Inspire Foundation, and we're actually rolling it out as a curriculum across schools in Australia. So onwards and outwards. The thing that I actually really like about this presentation is that although it is illustrated by me and the concepts are by me, the inspiration for the program came from a series of essays written for this book called Navigating Teenage Depression. And quite often, you know, I'll go out into schools, or people from the Black Dog Institute will go into schools and we'll deliver this thing. And I think that makes the difference, is that it comes from teens, not from someone who's older and telling them how they should be living their lives. But I also want to caveat this by saying that a lot of this just isn't for teenagers. I think everyone should be able to relate to some of the messages that you're going to see today. So what is it to be a teenager? In life, I think all of us set out with the ambitions or the goals of doing well, having something that we enjoy doing, having purpose, being in meaningful relationships, you know, all that sort of stuff. And along the way, we find or face certain pressures. The pressure of getting through school, getting through HSC, getting into uni, finding a job. The pressure of peer pressure, just trying to fit in, look a certain way, speak a certain way. The pressure of the media, and I've worked in advertising for a long time, as it was mentioned, and I know the power and the manipulation of the media and advertising. The pressure, you know, we live in a binge-drinking, drug-taking sort of country, and it is the larrikin state. And I think, you know, this seems to be part of our birthright or our initiation into growing into an adulthood, is to go out and get trashed and, you know, all this sort of stuff. And I think, you know, from when I was younger, you know, I'm no different to any other teenager, but when I was younger, you know, alcohol wasn't as strong and drugs weren't as readily available. There is also the pressure to risk take, which can obviously be a side effect of drugs and alcohol. We see this played out on our roads, we see it in violence in our streets and all that sort of stuff. And then this is one thing that I'm really, really passionate about, and it is technology. And the panel this morning were talking about technology, and I love technology, I use it all the time, but I also believe that in some ways we are becoming lost in space. You know, I think we are so many people are spending so much time on Facebook that they're actually losing that face-to-face connection. I also think, you know, with things like gaming, they did a study in Europe and they said that a lot of gamers, they lose up to 30% of empathy. So, you know, I do understand the power and the wisdom and the incredibleness of technology, and I use it myself a lot. But I also think that, you know, it can cause a lot of difficulty. When I was young, you know, my parents could just shield me from, you know, if there was something they didn't want me to see. Nowadays, it's open slather. Anything is out there. There is porn, there is war, there is, you know, people upload school fights, all that sort of stuff. And I just truly believe that we as humans, there is stuff that we just do not need to see that can really hurt us mentally. The other thing, then, there is the pressure of bullying, whether it's verbal or physical, whether it's texting or cyberbullying. You know, the terrible thing about cyberbullying, once it goes up, it stays up there for good. And I also believe that there is a sort of a sociopathic sort of behaviour where there is not that connection between what is done at the keyboard and to send, you know, to what goes on. In the old days, if I was really angry with someone, I'd write a letter and I'd go, oh, bloody hell, you know, and I'd stick it in an envelope and I'd stick that angry stamp on it and I'd slap it on the whole table. And then I'd go to sleep and I'd have a fight with my pillow, and then the next morning I'd get up and I'd walk down to the post office box, and by the time I got down there I might have changed my mind. But the difference now is there is just none of that sort of downtime to think about it, so people can get into all sorts of trouble. The other thing is to be in, you know, not the pressure, but to want to belong or to be a part of a family that cares, that nurtures, that understands, that supports and loves. But quite often in this country, you know, the opposite is true. You know, there's a lot of domestic violence, there's a lot of mood disorders and families and parents, alcohol and drug abuse and all that sort of stuff. So when we consider, you know, not only a teenager's lives, but all our lives, you know, we have a lot of pressures that we have to put up with and to face, you know, because life really is undulating series of ups and downs. And if we put a mood disorder on top of that, life can become incredibly difficult. So what is a mood disorder? How does it look? Well, it's loss of self-esteem. Someone pointed out a really good example of this to me a while ago, and they said, when someone dies, we can be incredibly sad. We can be, we can mourn their death. We can become depressed themselves. But the differences between, say, mourning and depression is that we don't lose our self-identity. We don't lose our, our self-esteem, if you like. Same as there's a lot of restlessness and anxiety, never being able to sit still, no matter how tired you are, going off the handle, blowing up, being really angry at the drop of a hat, which is not in keeping with what's going on. Indecisiveness, like the dog that constantly chases its tail, not knowing what to do, where to go, who to speak to, what to do, just that whole kind of total confusion. And I believe this is probably the most important slide, and this is the loss of joy. When you lose joy in life, this is when you begin to question what the point of it is. It is like a drop of ink in a glass of water. It just muddies everything. There is also a hopelessness about the future. I did a talk at a school about a year ago, and a mother got up and she said, look, my daughter's studying the GFC in economics. She's studying global warming and geography, and she's studying Auschwitz and the final solution in history. And the daughter was going, we're doomed, What's the point? So I really believe that we need to encourage our youth by saying, for every element of bad, there is equal measure of good. And we need to constantly remind ourselves of the positive stuff that's going on in our communities and our world. The other telltale sign is the willingness or wanting to pull out of typically important situations, not returning phone calls, emails, turning up to practice, turning up to school, if you like, just sort of wanting to eject. And then a little bit like anger, there's the crying, the melancholy that is not in keeping with what's going on. And then there's the ruminating thoughts, that sort of rusty, grinding machine that goes on and on, that is just of despair and hopelessness and self-depreciation, which I believe can lead to insomnia. And as I like to say, when good sleep goes, everything that depends on that sleep goes with it. It is your mood, your memory, your ability to get stuff done, all your concentration, everything, It's not good. I want to caveat by what I've been saying, everything that I'm saying, is that we will all experience some of this some of the time in our lives. But what I want to say is that if you're experiencing a lot of these things a lot of the time, for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks or more, you should go and seek some sort of counsel, some sort of help. So the facts and stats about mood disorders: people, when they're going through a mood disorder like depression or bipolar, they quite often feel very isolated. They feel very alone. But this is the truth of the matter, is that 1 in 5 of us will experience a significant mood disorder in your lifetime. And it's around about 1 in 20 will experience some form of bipolar in their lifetime. We actually think this is going to get higher. And the reason for that is that we're just getting better at diagnosing it. The different types of mood disorders: well, there's melancholic depression, which is biochemical. Quite often when we have a chemical imbalance, we need a chemical to rebalance our brain, which comes in the form of an antidepressant or lithium if you have bipolar. Quite often, this is one of my favourite slides, it is hereditary. It's passed from one thing to another. I shouldn't laugh, but I can, because my mum passed it on to me, so that's okay. And then there's psychotic depression, and this is, this happens to less than 3% of people. This is where people start hearing things, seeing things, and they quite often get hospitalised. Bipolar, the oscillating highs and lows. I'm going to touch on this a little bit later on. And then there's non-melancholic depression, which is probably the most common of the lot. This is caused by physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, death can bring it on, heartbreak, a failure of some sort of breakup in the family, stress. If you have a predisposition to stress, you're far more likely to fall to this. And then there's personality type. So what I'm trying to point out to you is that although, there can be many factors, it's our history, it's our genetical makeup, it's our mental fortitude, our mental resilience, all that sort of thing. So personality comes into it. The self-critical, the person who's always putting themselves down. There's the perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist. And it's a real bugger because, nothing is ever good enough. I do a lot of speaking around the country to corporations and to professional sporting bodies and all that sort of stuff. And perfectionism plays a big part in people's undoing. A little bit of perfectionism is good. Being shy can make life incredibly difficult. Being self-absorbed, the hissy fitter, it's all about me, 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 me. Not a lot about you. I don't care about you. It's all about me. And then there's the rejection sensitive, not only in love, but also about not being chosen for the part, the team, the play, the project, whatever it is. That can have a profound effect on their worldview. Now, talking about bipolar disorder, if everyday brains had a 4-stroke engine, people with bipolar have V8s. They also have little wheels and cheap drum brakes. So they're all power, they're all grunt, but there's no stopping ability. I don't know if any of you saw Stephen Fry's documentary on bipolar, but he said, when he goes into a high, he's got like 100 iPods or something. He goes out and he spins. Professor Parker, who started the institute, he told me once about a patient of his who said, look, I went out on the weekend, Doc, and I bought myself a Porsche. And Gordon said, well, congratulations. And he said, yeah, but I couldn't decide on which colour, so I bought 2. And then there's the loss of social norms and graces, doing stuff that you just would not do normally and then waking up the next day and totally regretting it. There's the talking over the top, having the great epiphany, having that connection with the universe, everything coming into alignment, solving the world's problems, writing the great novel, doing all that sort of stuff, talking over the top of people, never shutting up, never drawing breath. Some people love bipolar and like the highs and all that sort of stuff, but quite often the higher you go, the harder you fall. And this is where people can get into very serious trouble, and it's where bipolar has the highest rate of suicide in all the mood disorders. Common coping strategies, I'm going to have to speed up a little bit. Self-imposed solitary in the hope that it'll pass. And it will pass, but eventually if you're not dealing with it, it'll come around and bite you in the bum again and it'll be bigger. Putting energy into what I call the show face. We have a mantra in this country which is, she'll be right. There's also, bad behaviour attracts bad company and bad habits. So we can see again in our teens a lot of kids getting into trouble if they've got some sort of mood disorder. And then obviously there's self-harm and suicide. We have, our suicide rate in this country is 40% higher than the national road toll, which I think is amazing considering you see how much the government invests into making us aware of speeding and drinking and driving and all that sort of stuff. I say it is the permanent solution to a temporary problem. It is not the answer. The fears of seeking help. We live in a blokey country, in the country where I do go and do a lot of speaking, there's not a lot of things to do. You either play sport or you go to the pub. So if you're a bit vulnerable and you've got a situation, it can be very difficult to stick your hand up and ask for help. The fear of labels. The fear that word will get out through social media and texting. The fear of being medicated. The fear of hospitalisation. I think these are all legitimate fears, but they've got to be looked at in the context of what it is. Navigating the mental health maze. Well, when taking on a mood disorder, you alone can do it, but you can't do it on your own. This is why it's so important to have a supportive family, supportive network of friends, a supportive school. But where do you go? Who do you turn to? What do you do? You go to Dr. Google, I suppose. At the Black Dog Institute, we've got a website called biteback.org.au. We've done this especially for teens. It's fantastic. But also the Black Dog Institute, Beyond Blue, Sane, Reach Out, which is a fantastic website. And then the other thing is we encourage teenagers to go and speak to someone that they look up to. If it's not a parent, a coach or a teacher, a cousin or whatever it is. Apparently, school counsellors, if you look at the people that teenagers talk to, if the bar is there, it's their friends. The next one down is their mother. And then I think this one down here is about the school counsellor. So, that's got to change, we hope. The other person to go and speak to is the family doctor, because they know the family history. They may refer you to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, but the most important thing is to nip it in the bud. The benefits of good therapy. I think a lot of us go and seek counsel expecting them to tell us our problems and solve our problems. They've got the degree on the wall, they must know. But at the end of the day, if we don't have this kind of empathy, understanding, embracing, a desire to get better, a wellness plan, an end game, if you like. If you're not getting that, go and seek someone else. Get a second opinion. If your car's broken down, you take it to a mechanic, he doesn't fix it, you're not going to go back again. So, I think psychologists, psychiatrists and doctors, we're all human, and so I think we just need to find the right fit for us. The benefits of actually going and seeing someone is that we can release the stuff that we're carrying around. It gives ourselves the permission to heal, to move on. Quite often we will, as I mentioned, we'll go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist with the expectation that they'll have the answers. But quite often, I believe we know the answers. We know the truth within ourselves. And I think just at the end of the day, better out than in. If we can put our IMAX horror movies on the table, they become YouTube clips. They're just small. They're not as big as we think they are. And obviously for everyone, confidentiality is key, especially for a teenager. Touching on medication, well, if your life's out of control, medication can certainly level it out. I do believe that in this country we're overly medicated, and I don't think medication is the answer for everyone, but it can create a more stable thing in which we can carry on and make improved decisions. And also the other thing is that quite often side effects arrive before benefits. So a bit of patience and a bit of time is required, not sort of jumping back into what is that we're typically doing or that is typically bringing us undone. Family support and school support. Quite often families, parents are in denial, they'll have shame, they'll have mood disorders themselves, they'll be in total denial. But if you're 16 years and over, you can get your own Medicare card. You can go and see your own doctor, and then you can go and get your own help. But obviously in the perfect world, it's fantastic for a family to go to the initial assessment. The initial assessment can be one of the most important meetings in a person's life. As someone said, if it goes wrong and if it's terrible, they'll never go back again. So it's so important that it's right. And it also takes out a lot of the guesswork. Sort of understanding empathy, love is really important, but so is boundaries, having that sort of space between. The school counsellor, I think they need a bit of a rebranding. I think they've got a bit of a bad rap, and I think they should become life coaches or whatever it is, and they should move away from being right next door to the headmaster's office. But they are there for the teenager. They are there for support. And then how can the school help if the school doesn't know what's going on? So if the teenager is okay with it and the parents are okay with it, talk to the teachers, talk to that core group of friends. Because as we heard earlier on, support from friends is incredibly important. And I'm nearly wrapped up, but basically, if you're in trouble, never be afraid to stick your hand up and ask for help. There's no shame in doing so. The only shame is that you're going to miss out on life. And if you're ever worried about someone, never be afraid to reach out and say, are you okay? That small act of kindness or gesture or the hand on the shoulder can not only change your life, but it can save a life. I'm just going to wrap up really quickly. I've got 38 seconds to go. Understanding resilience, just quickly. Resilience starts with accepting what you can and cannot change. So please tattoo that onto your brain. You can't change the weather. You can certainly change how you interact with it. You can't change your life. You can't change your history. You can't change what has happened to you. But you can certainly change how you look at it, how you feel about it, how you move forward in the future. And you can't build resilience without going through some kind of adversity. Sometimes to get over something, we need to go through it. But when we come out the other side, we can be better, we can be stronger, we can be wiser, we can be kinder, we can live a life with more purpose. Finally, if you take the right steps, do the right things, talk to the right people, do things like meditation, mindfulness, a lot of stuff that we've been hearing about, exercise, eating well, resting well, and we talk to the right people and always hold on to what I call the most important word in the human language, which is hope. Whatever it is that we're going through, whatever we're facing, it will pass, it will pass, it will pass. Thank you very much.